Hello and welcome to Worthy Woman Healing. I am Lisa Czak, your host, healing women's minds, bodies, and souls one trigger at a time. Don't forget to like, rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe so even more women can heal their mind, body, and soul one trigger at a time. On today's episode, we are talking about how to stop suffering in silence. What is the number one thing you can do so you no longer are suffering in silence? Stay tuned. So this episode was inspired because I was on this amazing podcast called Stop Suffering in Silence. And this was a total God moment for me. I was doing door knocking, political door knocking. You know, those people that knock on your door and say, hey, vote for Trump, vote for Haley, whatever it is, right? And I did it because I didn't want my daughter going out alone because I didn't think it was safe. And so I was actually allowed out alone without her doing what I tell her not to do. And I happened to knock on the door of the vice mayor of where I live. And I didn't know it was the vice mayor. He started talking and then he shared with me that's who he is. So of course, I point out to him that it's Americans for Prosperity. That's who I was door knocking with. And there's a list of issues that are going on in America that we have to ask the people, what is your main issue that's affecting your family? Or what do you think is the main issue, the biggest issue in America today? And I noticed on that list, I don't know how they came up with the list. I still want to talk to the directors over there and find out who came up with this list, probably surveys, right? And I noticed though on there, sex trafficking is not on there. And I don't have the statistics in front of me, but sex trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar business. And the number one consumer is the United States of America. So it's kind of shocking to me that this isn't on the list, right? Sounds of Freedom movie came out. Everybody was all up in arms. Ooh, I want to help. I want to do this, right? That'll be a whole nother episode, by the way, how I feel about the Sounds of Freedom movie. Anyway, so he says to me, well, I happen to know a survivor of sex trafficking because I shared with him my story, right? Not all of it. I just said I'm a survivor. And so this is important to me. And so he said, I happen to know another survivor. So he put me in touch with her. And that's miracles of miracles, right? A politician actually doing what they say they're going to do. Maybe this guy should run for president. So she contacted me. We met for coffee. It was great. And I appeared on her podcast today. And this was the first time that I have gone on someone else's show and actually shared my story of how I got into the best shape of my life and then was groomed by a sex trafficker. That's my book right there, Portal Tears. Put the link up there, Steve, so they can order it if they want to. And I talk a lot about this, about how I was super comfortable talking about how my weight loss journey, how I lost 80 pounds, how I was ashamed of my weight and all of that. But interwoven in that story is a whole nother story about how I was groomed by a sex trafficker. And I haven't really been speaking out on that very much. Realizing why? Because I was suffering in silence. So, of course, this woman that the vice mayor introduces me to, who's also a sex trafficking survivor, guess what the name of her podcast is called? Stop Suffering in Silence. So it's fitting that that would be the very first podcast, the very first show that I go on, sharing what happened to me. And really the testimony, right, is not what happened to you, but how you overcame what happened to you, how you even figured out that something was happening to you. right? Because when you're in abuse, when you're being sex trafficked, when you're being sexually exploited, you don't see it as that because the person that's doing it is not the boogeyman, right? They're not this creep that has a pot belly and greasy hair, right? They're very charming. Predators, sexual predators are very charming. And this guy happened to be an executive producer of true crime shows. So he hid behind the mask of being a women's advocate, which only made it mess with my mind even more, right? There's no way he could be doing this. This is legit. He would never do this. So anyway, it really just reinforced for me because I have had women on my show when it was the Potty Mouth Preacher in season 1. Go back and listen. You'll hear stories of women, especially April. That was a really good episode. Her sharing her story of her 10-year abusive marriage. And it was the first time that she shared it on a show. And I always knew in my heart that it would be healing for a woman to share for the first time on a safe platform, right? It's got to be a safe, ethical platform, not one that's going to sensationalize it and just people just want to tune in to hear the gory details of your abuse. And I always knew it'd be healing, right? And I started getting evidence of that. The more women I had on my show in season 1 talking about their abuse and what happened to them for the first time, I was getting these messages. I feel so free, Lisa. I feel amazing. For the first time in years, I feel like a weight has lifted, even though I went to therapy, even though I went to counselors, pastors, priests, you name it. I feel so free now sharing that story for millions to hear, using my voice to share it, right? Even me, it's in the book, but there was something so powerful about being on Stop Suffering in Silence, their podcast, and actually using my voice and having them ask me questions that maybe before I would have been so scared to answer, right? But being able to answer them in a peaceful state, a calm state, using the techniques that I now teach women how to do. Imagine this. Imagine next December, in the middle of the hustle and bustle of the holidays, when you're usually doing all the stuff for everyone else, exhausting yourself, you take 4 nights and 5 days just for you. Imagine, right? No responsibilities, no kids, no husband, no job, no Christmas shopping, no wrapping presents, just 4 nights and 5 days all to yourself to fill your cup. So when you get back in time for Christmas, your cup is overflowing and you end up not being exhausted at the end of the holiday season, not getting that flu you always get, not getting that cold you always get, but feeling revitalized, refired, recharged, renewed before the new year even begins. If this sounds like something you're interested in, click the link below and sign up. And you get to, the best part is, you get to join Worthy Woman Healing Group from now until when the retreat starts. So you'll be healing alongside of all the other retreat participants, all the other women on the retreat, and we can celebrate in the Caribbean next December in a healed state. Woo! I can't wait. And remember, you are worth it. And it's so true. I feel like a weight has been lifted, right? Like I thought I was healed from this. And there was even, when I wrote the book, I realized that there was a scab that still needed to be ripped off, right? So I ripped off the scab. I didn't realize the power in speaking your story to another safe person. you just feel free. I feel like I lost 230 pounds, whatever it was, however much that predator, that, however much he weighed. Like, I feel like I lost that weight. And it's so freeing. It's so freeing. I feel like I'm on a high. Like, I just feel on top of the world again. Like, I came back. Like, I shed portal tears is drowning the demons beneath the fat to keep the weight from coming back. And I feel like I released a demon of silence. I released all the weight that demon of silence was living under. Because when you are being abused, when you are being exploited, when you are being sex trafficked, you hear all the time, no one's going to believe you. You're a willing participant. You willingly did that. You willingly said that. You chose this, right? And so you start believing that. And their main goal is to get you to live in shame and silence. Those are the devil's favorite weapons, shame and silence. The predatory producer who exploited me went so far to say, and it's scary that I haven't memorized in my head. I haven't memorized in my head because it was so chilling to read over and over again. I still have the text. And he said to me, and I quote, "My inclination will never be to degrade you or shame you, but rather make you suffer slowly and silently behind the scenes, kill you with silence." End of quote. That is what the predatory producer who sexually exploited me, groomed me, trafficked me, told me in a text. Stupid him, because I still got the text. Right? And that's chilling. And that stayed with me. And just being on that podcast today, I feel like it's gone, right? That no longer has a hold on me. There's no more fear around. It's okay for me to shout from the rooftops what happened to me. So the number one way to stop suffering in silence is to speak your story. Now, I'm not saying don't get yourself tripped up and go find another guy and start oversharing. That's how I got in trouble in the first place. That's how we all get into trouble when we start sharing too much too soon. That gives predators an opening. They know exactly where to go then, right? They know how to reel you in that way. What I mean is go to somebody safe, whether that be a therapist, a counselor, your best friend, your mom, your dad, your sister, a podcast. Come on my podcast. Go on, contact Stop Suffering in Silence podcast, right? And share your story. Speak it out loud, because just writing it, even though I've had, hundreds and hundreds of people buy this book, it still isn't the same as me speaking it out. There's much more of a freedom behind that. So this podcast it's going to be weekly. 3 episodes are going to be really quick episodes like this one. And then the 4th episode of every month is going to be me having a woman on, sharing her story. And most of them, I would say, are sharing their story of what happened to them and how they overcame what happened to them for the first time. If that's something you're interested in, just shoot me, drop in comments, give me a heart in comments, and we'll find a way to connect us, okay? Or you can email me at lisaczak@gmail.com. So anyway, to recap, the number one way to stop suffering in silence, share your story with somebody safe. Somebody you know is safe, that isn't going to use it against you, that isn't going to shame you for it, that isn't going to judge you for it, that is simply going to listen and say, "I believe you. And remember, you are worth it."